Hi everybody and welcome back to this fifth session. So in the last module we studied strategic choices and different types of strategies. This fifth session is all about identifying a company's strategy. So before we continue, see if you can just pause the video and taking into account everything that we've studied so far, what do you think we need to take into account? What do we need to consider when identifying a company's strategy? So like I say, stop the video and see if you can just think about putting everything together that we've learned so far and what do you come up with. So here we've got a slide showing us the kind of areas of company strategy that we need to take into account. So we've got in the middle here the pattern of actions and business approaches that define a company strategy. And then these are some of the areas of consideration. So very much around actions. So for example, if we start here, say starting at in the corner here, actions to diversify the company's revenue and earnings by entering into new business. We might also want to look at actions to gain sales and market share via lower prices, more performance features, more appealing design, better quality of customer service, wider production selection, etc. We may also want to take into account actions to respond to changing market conditions and other external circumstances, or perhaps actions to enter new geographic or product markets or exit existing markets. We may also want to consider actions to merge with or acquire rival companies, and then maybe actions to form strategic alliances and collaborative partnerships, or perhaps to pursue new market opportunities and defend against threats to the company's well-being. We may also want to think about how to define how the company manages research and development, production, sales and marketing, finance and other key activities, so actions and approaches in that area. And then also actions to strengthen competitive capabilities and correct any potential weaknesses amongst competition. So those are some of the areas that we might want to consider when we are looking at identifying a company strategy. So taking into account everything that we've studied so far, what do you know in terms of the strategy hierarchy? What is at the top of identifying a company's strategy? So if you remember, cast your mind back to a couple of sessions ago, we talked a little bit about strategic management. So in most large corporations, there are several levels of strategy. So strategic management is the highest in the sense that it's the broadest, applying to all parts of the firm, and it gives direction to what we looked at in one of the previous sessions, which was all about values and understanding corporate culture, corporate goals, and corporate missions. So under this broad corporate strategy, there are often what we call functional or business unit strategies, and we came across that word in previous sessions. So what do you know about these? So if we look at a diagram of what this looks like, we can see that we've got levels. So we've got the corporate level, the strategic business unit level, and the functional level. And then we've got strategy. So we've got our structure, which involves corporate offices and different strategic business units, and then different functional areas of the business, whether that, for example, involves IT or operations, marketing, finance, HR, personnel. So we can see then that strategy is at the very top level, is at the corporate level. Then it breaks it down into the business level, which is broken down into different business units. And then the functional level, which is separated into some of these areas that we have highlighted here. So the corporate strategy is the company-wide game plan for managing a set of businesses. And this involves the CEO and other senior executives. So let's just be clear, when we talk about business strategy, this refers to the aggregated operational strategies of single business firm, or that of a strategic business unit in a diversified corporation. This refers to the way in which a firm competes in its chosen arenas. Therefore, the corporate strategy refers to the overarching strategy of the diversified firm. And a corporate strategy, therefore, answers the questions of in which businesses should we compete, and how does being in one business add to the competitive advantage of another portfolio firm, as well as the competitive advantage of the corporation as a whole. So there we've got an understanding of business and corporate strategy. So if we look then, as we saw in the diagram before, we then looked at the business strategy for the strategic business units, or SBUs, we generally find that there's one for each business. So the company has diversified where it's diversified into. And the actions to build competitive capabilities and strengthen market position are important here. And then this strategy for the business units is executed by general managers, plant heads, division heads of each business with inputs from corporate and functional levels. And many companies feel that a functional organisational structure is not an efficient way to organise activities, so they have re-engineered according to processes or strategic business unit, SBUs. We came across SBUs in the session previously, and if you remember, a strategic business unit is a semi-autonomous unit within an organisation. And an SBU is usually responsible for its own budgeting, new product decisions, hiring decisions, and price setting. And an SBU is treated as an internal profit centre by corporate headquarters. Each SBU is responsible for developing its business strategies and strategies that must be in tune with broader corporate strategies. So if we've talked about SBUs, if we go down to the level that we saw in the diagram before, what do you think about in terms of the functional strategies? What do you think forms part of the functional strategies? So pause the video here and just see if you can take into account what do you think is important in the functional strategy side. So functional strategies include marketing strategies, new product development strategies, HR, finance, legal, supply chain, and information technology management. And the emphasis here is on short and medium term plans, and it's limited to the domain of each department's functional responsibility, and therefore it's executed by functional heads. Each functional department attempts to do its part in meeting overall corporate objectives, and hence to some extent their strategies are derived therefore from the broader corporate and business strategies. And then what we have in the diagram we saw before is the lowest level of strategy, which is operational strategy. So at this level, detailing is done to add completeness to the business and the functional strategies. It's much more narrow in focus and deals with day-to-day operational activities, such as scheduling criteria. Operational strategy must operate within a budget, but it is not at liberty to adjust or create that budget. So operational level strategy was encouraged by Peter Drucker, which you may have come across, in his theory of management by objectives, or MBO. So operational level strategies are informed to business level strategies, which in turn are informed to corporate level strategies. So these strategies are executed by brand managers, operating managers, plant managers, and important activities such as advertising, website operations, distributions are all involved at this level. Another important term to understand is what we call dynamic strategy. So since the turn of the millennium, there has been a tendency in some firms to revert to a more simple strategic structure. And this is being driven by information technology. So it's felt that knowledge management systems should be used to share information and create common goals. So strategic divisions are thought to hamper this process. So most recently, this notion of strategy has been captured under the rubric of dynamic strategy, popularised by the strategic management textbook authored by Carpenter and Sanders. And this particular work is built on that of Brown and Eisenhart, as well as Christensen, and portrays firm strategy, both business and corporate, as necessarily embracing ongoing strategic change and the seamless integration of strategy formulation and implementation. Such change and implementation are usually built into the strategy through the staging and pacing facets. So we've talked about different types of strategy and the different levels. Let's talk a little bit now about strategists. So what are their roles? What is their involvement in strategy setting, and what level are they at? So strategists are individuals or groups who are primarily involved in the formulation, implementation and evaluation of strategy. So in a limited sense, all managers are strategists, but we may have outside agencies involved in various aspects of strategic management who are also called strategists. So at the very top level, we talk about the board of directors. So the board is an ultimate legal authority of an organisation. And the board is responsible to the owners, the shareholders, government, controlling agencies and financial institutes. So they get elected and appointed by holding or parent company, and the board is required to direct and is involved in reviewing and screening executive decisions in light of their environmental, business and organisational implications. So the role of the board of directors is to guide the senior management in setting and accomplishing objectives, reviewing and evaluating organisational performance, and appointing senior executives. The board is involved in setting strategic direction, establishing objectives and strategy, the monitoring and therefore then the reviewing of its achievement. Then you also, a very key strategist in this process is the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer, who's responsible for all aspects of strategic management from the formulation to evaluation of strategy. And the CEO plays a pivotal role in setting mission, objectives and goals. He or she formulates and implements strategy and ensures the organisation does not deviate from a predetermined path. So the CEO is primarily responsible for strategic management of the organisation. Another key strategist is an entrepreneur, and that's the person who starts the new business and is a venture capitalist. He or she has to play a proactive role to provide a sense of direction, set objectives and formulate strategies. And he or she is different from formal systems and plays all of these strategic roles simultaneously. Other key players who are strategists involve senior management. So this consists of higher management level, starting from the CEO to functional managers and the profit centre or strategic business unit heads. Senior management is responsible for implementing the strategies and plans and for a periodic evaluation of their performance. Organisationally, they come together in the form of committees, task forces, work groups, think tanks, and play a very important role in strategic management. Then you have the strategic business unit level executives, and those are formed within each business and have a clearly defined product. So therefore it could be market segment with a unique strategy. They are CEOs for their strategic business units, and hence strategic business unit level strategy formulation and implementation is their main role. In terms of other key strategic players, we have corporate planning. And corporate planning assists management in all aspects of strategy formulation, implementation and evaluation. These are the people who are responsible for preparation and communication of strategic plans, providing administrative support and playing a measurement and controlling role. They do not form strategy and do not initiate a process on their own. And then of course we have people who are consultants. So in the absence of a corporate planning, many organisations takes an outside help in the form of consultants or consulting companies. So besides providing corporate strategy and strategic planning, they are specialist, knowledgeable, outsiders, unbiased and provide objective evaluation. For example, AF Ferguson, PwC, KPMG, Bill & Moria and McKinsey. Other strategic players involve middle level managers, so they relate more to the operational side, as we saw in that diagram, the different levels. So we've got operational sort of further down the chain, and they seldom play an active role in strategic management. They form more the departmental functional plan in light of broad objectives and goals of the organisation, provided in what we looked at in sessions earlier, which was around the area of vision, mission, goals and objective statements of the organisation. So the middle level managers are the implementers. They're the followers of guidelines, the receivers of communication about strategic plans. They are basically involved in the implementation of functional strategies. Then you've got the executive assistant. So an executive assistant is a person who assists the chief executive in the performance of his or her duties, like collecting data and analysis and suggesting alternatives. He or she prepares a brief for various plans, proposals and projects. And the executive assistant helps in public relations and liaison functions. He or she coordinates activities with the internal staff and outsiders, and basically is a corporate planner for the CEO. So generally he or she will orientate from finance, will generally orientate from a finance or come from a finance background, ensuring and opining on return on investment and strategic positioning of the organisation. So we'll now have a little look at a framework developed by Richard Rumlett for evaluating alternative strategies. So it's described in a series of tests, and these tests are as follows. So the first test is all about consistency. So according to Rumlett, if we want to evaluate the strategy based on consistency, it must not present mutually inconsistent goals and policies. The other part of the framework involves consonance. So the strategy must represent an adaptive response to the external environment and to the critical changes occurring within it. Another test that Rumlett subscribes to is all about advantage. So advantage is the fact that the strategy must provide for the creation and or maintenance of a competitive advantage in the selected area of activity. And the last test is all about feasibility. So the strategy must neither overtax available resources nor create unsolvable sub-problems. So when we talk about the area of strategy, what do you think are the advantages and disadvantages? See if you can pause the video and just consider what are the advantages and disadvantages of having a strategy. So on the advantages side, we know that strategy sets direction, but a disadvantage is it can also serve as a set of blinders to hide potential dangers. Strategy focuses efforts. There may be no peripheral vision, however, and the issue is that it can become heavily embedded into the fabric of the organisation. Strategy defines the organisation, but defining it too sharply results in the rich complexity of the system being lost. And strategy provides consistency, but on the disadvantage side, this could hinder creativity. So we can see there's advantages and disadvantages on both sides. In terms of kinds of corporate strategy, there are four grand strategic alternatives. So there is stability strategy. So the main aim here is stabilising and improving functional performance. And this is split up into no change strategy, profit strategy, pause or proceed with caution strategy. Another kind of corporate strategy is expansion strategy. So the main aim here is high growth. This could be done through concentration, integration, diversification, cooperation, internationalization, and we've looked at this in the last session. We talked about mergers, takeovers, joint ventures. These are some of the ways that this expansion strategy could be realized. Global strategy, international, multi-domestic or transnational strategy. Another kind of corporate strategy is retrenchment strategy, which was something we also discussed in the last session. So the main aim here is contraction of its activities, and this can be done through turnaround, divestment and liquidation, such as winding up, either compulsory, voluntary, or winding up under the supervision of court. There's combination strategies. So a combination of all of the above, three policies simultaneously in different businesses or at different times. And we see some of the possibilities here, whether it's mergers, diversification or expansion. And some things to be aware of on this idea of strategy formulation. There are various schools of thought on it. So from 1980 onwards, the fourth paradigm says that the subject of strategic management is still under evolution. Strategic decision making is at the core of managerial activity. Their strategic behaviour is the outcome of formation of strategy. We came across Mintzberg in earlier sessions. So Mintzberg is a key person who's contributed to this school of thought, and he and other doyens in the field of strategy have formed various perspectives called as schools of thought. The perspective schools are as follows. So we have the design school by Slenick and Andrews, and the design school believes that strategy is unique and the process of strategy formulation is based on judgment and thinking. Another one of the perspective schools is the planning school by Ansoff, and here strategy is seen as a plan divided into sub-strategies and programs, and the lead role in strategy formation is played by strategy planners. Another of the perspective schools is the positioning school by Schendel, Hatton and Porter. And under this school, strategy is seen as a set of planned generic positions chosen by a firm on the basis of an analysis of the competition and the industry in which they operate. And that's what we looked at in the last session, where we saw a little bit about Porter's generic strategies model. Then you have the descriptive schools, and these are split into 4 here. We've got the entrepreneurial school by Schumpeter and Cole, where strategy formation is a little bit more, or mainly intuitive, visionary and deliberate. Strategy is an outcome of a personal and unique perspective to create a niche. We have the cognitive school by Simon and March, where strategy formation is a mental process. The lead role is played by a thinker philosopher. We have the learning school by Weick, Quinn, Senge and Lindblom, and this school perceives strategy formation as an emergent process. This process is informal and messy, and the lead role is played by the learner. And then we also have the power school under the descriptive schools by Allison and Astley. And here strategy is seen as political and cooperative process or pattern. This school perceives strategy formation as a negotiation process. The process of strategy formation is messy, emergent and deliberate. So those are the 4 key descriptive schools. And 2 more of the descriptive schools to add to this list are the cultural school, which is seen as a collective perspective, and strategy formation is ideological, constrained and deliberate. And the cultural school was proposed by Renman and Norman. And then the final one in the descriptive schools, the environmental school, which is Hannon, Freeman and Pugh's descriptor, which is all about strategy formation being played by the environment as an entity. So the lead role is in strategy formation played by the environment. The process of strategy formation here is reactive, passive and imposed, and hence deliberate. And then the last type of school we're going to look at is the integrative school. This is Chandler, Miles and Snow. And the strategy is viewed more in relation to a specific context, and any of the 9 schools mentioned above can be used to form the process. The strategy formation process is integrative, episodic and sequential. So hopefully now, after following this session, you have a much clearer idea about the strategy hierarchy, the different types of corporate strategy, the key players or the key strategists and the role they play, and the different schools of thought on strategy formation. So thank you for your attention, and I will see you in the next session.